Gentlemen, welcome to ThePopDiner. Hey guys, this is Dennis.
This is Tim.
And as you might have guessed from the song, our podcast today is going to be directed mostly about Fight Club and also about the changing role of men that Fight Club kind of helps illustrate. Most of you probably know the story of Fight Club, but I'll go into it with as few spoilers as possible. Basically, a car recall specialist is having trouble sleeping and is going through some what turns out are psychological problems because of the emptiness of his life. And he's basically a young urban professional. He worked all his life to get somewhere. Now he's there, and there's nothing else for him. And he's just so bored that he starts going to support groups, like people dying of various diseases, to feel something, and then he can sleep. So without getting too much into it, him and his friend Tyler decide to start a club for men, Fight Club, where people just get together and fight. And I'm making it sound very simple, but it's a pretty complex movie, and a pretty complex book. And it speaks a lot about the changing role of men in society. A couple of scenes there, he's furnishing his apartment, and he's taking particular care to furnish his apartment and kind of get everything together so his apartment looks good, which is traditionally, correct me if I'm wrong, that's traditionally a woman's domain, furnishing the house, if it's left to a man, at least like our fathers or his father, he's roughly the same generation, it would be, simple table, maybe some sports posters or whatever, but he's very style conscious. And actually, his friend Tyler, played by Brad Pitt, asks him, he says, "Do you know what a duvet is?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a comforter." And then Brad Pitt says, "No, it's a blanket. It's just a blanket." Why do we know that? Is that necessary for our existence in a hunter-gatherer sense of the word? Sorry. But basically, the movie is also kind of pushing towards a naturalism. You don't need all this stuff. You don't need all this stuff. Not only do you not need it, it's detrimental to you. Get back to basics. Get back to what really matters, like living. Feel like the visceral excitement of a fight. Mm-hmm. Getting the adrenaline pumping, and forget all the other stuff. The other stuff doesn't matter. One of the quotes, I'm going to be quoting very liberally from the movie. One of the quotes is, "We're a nation that was raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is really what we need." That comes after a conversation about, get married. Well, I can't. I'm a 30-year-old boy, which ties into another thing that we've talked about. Probably we'll talk about again. Adults staying children longer. I mean.
Well, that's actually almost three separate and extremely interesting topics. One is the perceived death of masculinity. The second is the sort of bash on our consumerist society. And the third, I forgot already. What was it? What's the last thing you said? Children. Yes,
being children.
We take our time growing up and maturing if we do it all. I have problems with two of those issues. One is, and I use the term perceived masculinity because I think Fight Club started a trend of reanalyzing what masculinity is really all about. But similarly, I don't know what came first, if it was Fight Club or that whole movement of the whole metrosexual.
I think it was Fight Club. Metrosexual was a 2000 thing. Fight Club was 96, I think, when the book came out.
So it's funny because to me, Fight Club would have been more topical, maybe if it came out 5 or 6 years later. particularly after the whole metrosexual craze, where guys were getting their nails done.
Actually, it's funny you should mention that because you're a fucking moron. No, I'm kidding. We'll edit that one out. Because what happened? One of the part of the genesis of Fight Club was Chuck Palahniuk went on a camping trip and he got into a fight with another camper over a campsite and got punched in the face and had a big black eye. Mm-hmm. And he went back to work the following Monday, and no one said anything. They all kind of ignored him, and that really kind of got the gears started for Fight Club. No one's going to say anything or anything like that, or at least gave him part of the plot to hang the rest of his philosophy on. But also, he was looking at books that were bestsellers in around that time, 95, 96, probably 94. And they were all directed towards women. There was not really any big-selling male books. And the ones that, like, How to Make an American Quilt was big at that point.
The Bridges of Madison County?
It probably was. But he, so he kind of wrote it as a, something for men, because I guess he perceived a market for that. Mm-hmm. Which is in itself kind of weird, because I think 75% of the book buying public is female. It's a huge percentage that's female.
Well, it's funny because what you had said before about men knowing what a duvet is and this and that, like, I would say on the surface, reading has that certain stigma attached to it as being it's not really cool. So for this book to say to get back to the basics of fighting and hunting and gathering, and then but it's putting it in the concept of literature.
So you got to do something feminine to get
yeah, exactly. Advice. So it seems like a little bit interesting there. But
well, it depends on the reading. I mean, women aren't supposed to be smart. Women, we're talking.
We're going by perception here. I understand.
Yeah. Women aren't supposed to be smart. All women are cooks, men are chefs, because chefs have to read books on recipes, whereas women just have to cook. So I think I do think the Fight Club thing is equally like the book, putting it in book form is equally valid.
Well, let's talk about the topic that you brought up with Fight Club being
which one?
The death of masculinity. We'll talk about that first because the reason for this book being able to exist, or the story being able to exist, is because you're looking at this was written in, was it 95, 96? I don't know when the book came out.
96.
96. The main character was roughly 30, so he would have been born in 1966. Now, he would have been one of the first generations of humans, of Americans, sorry. He's not American, you're not human, so we'll edit that out in the belch. See, I'm so masculine. This would be like the first generation of Americans that grew up sort of after the sexual revolution, and after women are now in the workplace. So there's a major issue with what's happening here is that the reason men's roles have become so vague in our society by this time is because of the change in women working, and so now where you look at traditional gender roles, and once again, this is also a perception of look at Leave It to Beaver, that's the old cliche is you get the wife is home, she sends the kids off and the husband off to school, hands them their lunch bag at the door, and gives the husband a kiss on the cheek, and same thing, the husband comes home from working and she had been supposedly cleaning the house all day, but we all know she was probably eating bonbons and watching
a pool boy.
Yeah, so these are all the ideas that we had of society. And so now you have women in the workplace, you don't know who's making breakfast, who's making dinner, who's sending the kids off to school.
The pill.
Now, of course, the pill, too. So now you have the sexual revolution, which is bringing about women having sex for pleasure, and not for the sole purpose of
snaring a man.
Yes, of bagging a husband so you could give him his lunch bag at the door every morning. So now that this... the point Fight Club seems to be making, I'm assuming, is they don't get into all these details that I mentioned with that, but is that, yes, now male roles have been diminished because women are also bringing home the bacon, and men are also forced to take on some of the women roles as well. If the woman's at work and the guy gets home first, and he probably is expected to put dinner on.
Clean the house,
So
I mean, now we have couples where women make more than men, which is have an effect, maybe not personally, but societally.
Also, I think it depends on the man too. You have something, there's something called male pride, of course, where some men might feel intimidated by a woman making more money, and other guys probably won't give a shit.
Oh, I wouldn't give a fuck.
I wouldn't either. I mean, we had a guy that I used to work with who his wife was a successful interior designer, and she went out and made a lot of money and was able to afford their nice apartment, and he would stay home, come home from his slightly above minimum wage job and play video games all day, and I'm sure he was completely happy with that. But that's my point. There's a lot of perceptions here that are being assumed that with Fight Club that men are missing that aspect of their life. Like I said, on the surface, it's supposed to be like if you're a man, you're not happy with your wife or girlfriend or whatever making more money than you.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is that a lot of guys actually don't care.
I think it's something deeper than that. I think I think it even ties into why Europe is going Muslim, because people are getting hooked on painkillers in America, and the reason is there's really we've lost something and we're trying to fill it. We might not even know we lost, but we as men have lost something, and women as women have lost something. But they're filling it with non-traditional roles, like getting jobs out in the workplace, cooking, whatever the hell.
Well, there's a certain with women. I feel like a lot of there's the whole phenomenon of women that are they do spend a great deal of their young life, the 20s and 30s, going to college and then getting a decent job and then working their way up the corporate ladder, only to decide that they want to have children either later in life, or that it ends up being too late because now they're into their mid-40s and they're having trouble getting pregnant. So the ramifications for women are also equally strong with this whole social shift. But I don't know. I think it's just to me it's just like a far-fetched idea that men really feel that need to get out and. I know Fight Club is obviously very over the top on purpose, and there's some twists in the plot of which make it relevant, but I don't think that. I think to say that men are missing that sort of aggressive behavior is a falsity, because I think guys find that sort of filler at other places, whether it's going out and drinking with their friends and getting that aggression out with just banter and playing video games, violent video games. I think there's a certain. I think, and listen, being a white male, I know we have not been given the short end of many sticks. Is that the term? But it's almost insulting to a way to try to break down the male psyche. People like to think on the surface women are very complex creatures and men are very simple creatures, and I would agree to some aspects of that. But to say that men are as simple as just they just need a beer and they get into a fight every now and then to make them happy and relive their regain their natural born masculinity, it's kind of it's almost insulting in a way.
Well, I don't think that's insulting at all. I think that is a part of the male psyche, and not that that's all that it takes to make a man happy, but that's part of it, sure.
I feel like to say that masculinity has died because of all these social changes, it might have to be less with that and more to do with just because we've become civilized. I mean, humans are civilized. If you want to compare humans to the animal kingdom, which people are off to do when talking about any topic, from gay marriage to gender roles to the simplicity of the animal life versus our mass consumerist society, it's unfair to compare us to animals because we are different.
Yeah,
and
sure. Yes.
Just to get to these sort of core instincts of men just wanting to fight and be aggressive is saying that we're the same as animals, which we're not. It's
saying that we have the same instincts as animals. We just have better ways to dress them up, and we can change them, which we do in order to live in a society. But they're still there.
I agree, but to say that we're all so repressed that we need some kind of release, it's kind of assuming that everyone in society is unhappy.
Not everyone. Just young professionals.
I don't think they're any more or less unhappy now than they were 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Maybe. It's possible. But it took that long to I guess for the book to gestate, really, to catch the cultural significance of it. But even then, like 50, 60 years ago, there was no way you'd go to work and have your boss be a woman. Even 20 years ago, really, that's kind of a stretch. And not that any of the bosses in Fight Club are women, but like I'm saying, that's another thing that contributes.
Yeah, I think once again that whole goes along the whole idea that many men would feel threatened by having a woman boss.
Many men do feel threatened by.
It's true. Maybe having grown
less
up
now.
Yeah, I guess that it is. Maybe I'm like we're a little bit younger than. Like we didn't have the culture shock that maybe a generation above us did of witnessing all this. We obviously came of an age after high school where like this was already the world where women were already in the workplace, and we both our generation grew up as latchkey kids, and we grew up with mothers working, so it wasn't the same culture shock to someone who's maybe 10 or 15 years older than us that saw this whole thing happen.
Yeah.
So for me to come out in my first job, at a supermarket, I had women bosses as well as men bosses.
Yeah, sure.
And
we've been pretty much inured to it.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't have that sort of effect, and maybe I'm also a product of whether this is good or bad of the media, where I was kind of messages of equality and stuff were kind of fed to me as a kid anyway. Not that I'm saying that that's wrong, but I'm just saying that we sort of I don't know. It wasn't a surprise to us to come into a world that. So I can see how someone coming into this, especially from like our father's ages, who like my dad's still appalled that women are wearing pants and not skirts, and which is a whole other issue in itself. There's actually an interesting topic there with people tend to have a lot of animosity or towards older generations for sexism and racism and stuff, and you got to look at it from their perspective and how they were raised as well. But that's another thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess my point is that men have evolved to a certain point, not because society has pushed them there. Let's be honest. The amount of influence that women have had on male culture, I think, is no more now than it ever was before. So to say
but it's a different sort, no question.
I don't know.
Women aren't using trickery and deceit and all that to get their way. Women are using their brains, and you don't have to be a queen to exercise that power, whereas you did before. I mean, even one of the pharaohs of Egypt, the only female pharaoh. There were female queens, but there was only one female pharaoh. But she still had to wear a bloody beard, one of those fake beards. Even though they knew she was female, she had to wear that beard. Whereas now, that's ridiculous. A woman can be considered feminine and still be tough, be a boss. So in a way, the James Bond fantasies have come true, much to the regret of some of the James Bond fans.
Well, it's funny. It's interesting that you mentioned James Bond, because around the same time as Fight Club was when the James Bond franchise was sort of rebooted with GoldenEye, and that was a movie where they kind of mocked the past James Bond attitudes. They called him a dinosaur for his womanizing ways, and it's interesting because the mid '90s, when Fight Club and GoldenEye came out, was, to me, and this is also maybe another topic, a major shift in political correctness.
Yeah. And
I think that has a lot to do with why people are starting to analyze these things, like gender roles and... there's 1,000 different topics here. I know that's something you mentioned about, women are allowed to be feminine in the workplace now, and it just... it leads to another topic of sexual harassment, which is kind of relevant here too, because...
Kind of subsumed into the PC sphere, though.
Yeah, it's... And stop me if I get too far off topic, but...
I don't know.
But, this is... I guess it was... When was the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill thing? Was that 92?
91, 92.
Yeah, so that kind of started this whole...
I think it was 91. ...current
crop of, political correctness and sexual harassment. So I'm not obviously a proponent of sexual harassment, but you have to look at, on the surface, people tend to ignore the fact that genders are different. I'm not talking about by choice, I'm talking about by natural instinct, and also we are physically different. People tend to deny the fact that men have a penis and women have a vagina, but let's be honest, they do. And now I'm probably offending any of our transgender listeners.
the friggin' Now organization is going to be bombarding us.
But with the topic of women in the workplace, it brings about. Let's be honest, men are pigs in the sense that term is used because we are. Like, you look at a woman in a sexual manner, and you cannot not do that. It's impossible. And so to put women into the workplace, going back a couple decades, it would be ridiculous to ignore the fact that men are going to look at you physically before they look at you as a superior. Or no matter how you can look at a woman can be an executive, a CEO, head of a huge corporation, and the guy in the mailroom is still going to look at her first as a sex object than he is as what's the opposite of subordinate?
Superior.
Superior. Thank you. I'm having a mind fuck here. Mind fart, whatever. So I don't know. But basically, the point of all this is that the gender roles are extremely relevant, and it's you can't really deny that they exist, which is what people try to do when they talk about these topics.
Actually, that reminds me of a joke that actually is kind of germane to what we're talking about. Okay, Tim.
Jermaine Jackson?
No, different Jermaine.
Okay.
There's no different Jermaine. Tim, this guy has to hire a new secretary. He's got 3 candidates. One's a girl that went to Harvard. One's a girl that went to Yale.
Okay.
And one's a girl that went to Princeton. Which one does he hire?
One went to Harvard, one went to Yale, one went to Princeton. I don't know. Which one?
The one with the biggest tits.
Nice. All right, getting back to Fight Club, and we had mentioned metrosexuals earlier. I don't think men became metrosexuals because of this whole social shift in our society with women and stuff, because they were forced there. I think the men that decided, and I'm certainly not one of them, and I know you're not either, they decided to go get their nails done and get their their chest waxed. I think they're doing it because they want to, not because society has sort of pigeonholed them or told them to go, and this is how you have to be.
Well, I think society has told them that, or at least the women they're trying to bang.
Which it gets back to that main issue of it all being instinctual.
Yeah.
So if men are grooming themselves,
women used to do all that stuff and trim and get manicures and pedicures to be attractive to men. Now with the changing sexual mores and social mores, men have to do the same thing that women have been doing for centuries.
But that isn't a new thing. Look at the peacock. I'll bring us the peacock, the actual animal, the peacock.
Oh, okay.
I know you heard cock and you stopped at that.
Coming from your mouth, yes.
The beautiful peacock with the nice feathers. Those are the male peacocks only, not the female peacocks. And the male peacocks exist like that in order to attract a female mate. So to say that, now I'm going back to what I said, I'm comparing us to the animal community, but men prettying themselves are basically doing it to get laid.
But what is prettying yourself?
Well, that's just changes with society. You can't say it's a new thing. I mean, wearing, clothes change, hairstyles change, everything changes. So this is just an example of another change. Yeah. But for some reason, people tend to think that the whole metrosexual thing is a sort of a feminizing of men, which I don't think it is. It's just a shift, though. It's not really a feminizing of men. So if a guy decides to start getting a manicure, that doesn't mean that he's becoming more feminine. That just means he just wants his nails to be looking nice, which on the surface is a feminine quality by caring about your appearance. But that's what I was saying earlier, is that this perception that men don't give a shit about anything besides beer and getting into fights has been incorrect all along.
That has not been incorrect. And once men can drop the pretense, they generally do. But the whole women, cougars, that whole phenomena. That's actually probably been forever, but it's now acceptable for women to be aggressors, and men dress the part to be aggressed against.
I don't think so. I don't know if it is acceptable for women to be aggressors. I think that the certain gender roles that have been there since the dawn of time are still expected to be in place. I think that when you go on a first date, no matter how
progressive,
how progressive you are, and how hoard out the man is with his makeup and his nails and his clean-shaven head, whatever, and how aggressive the female is. I think it's still expected for the man to pay for the meal, and he's still expected to hold the door open. So society seems to want to like shift, on one end to being equals, but at the same time, if you don't hold the door for a woman, she's going to be kind of insulted.
I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying there's not huge contradictions in it, but I don't think it's really a question that men are being feminized. Another word for feminization is urbanization.
Yeah, but look at the French. No insults on the French here. Because I know you're not giving you ammunition, but the French with their powdered wigs and their makeup. Like, this is not a new phenomenon. This is not.
Yes, the French, that noted bastion of heterosexuality.
But I mean, but they were, these were supposedly heterosexual men. So, if you want to stay serious here, I mean, obviously this is not a new thing.
No,
so
I believe it is a new thing. I mean, I think that kind of the powdered wigs and stuff like that. The powdered wigs weren't female wigs. I mean, the powdered wigs were there were different sorts of wigs. Mm-hmm. There were male wigs and there were female wigs, and they did that because most people were going bald. So it was a concession to vanity. That I'll give you. But the basic roles of men and women never changed in France. Men still like men and women still like women.
But even like I was saying before, it just has to do with the standards of the time. And, men have been expected to shave for many, many years. But that doesn't seem any more natural than shaving your chest hair, which now seems to be a metrosexual thing. So why is it okay and masculine to shave your face but not your chest or your back? It doesn't make sense. It's because of society, not because of anything.
Well, yes, of course it's because of society. Yes.
But how does that make you feminine?
Because you're shaving your chest.
So why isn't shaving your face make you feminine?
Because you're shaving your face. I mean, these things are, I'm not arguing that they make sense. I'm not arguing that there is a difference between shaving your face and shaving your chest. But I am arguing that that's how it is perceived. And the perception is what we're talking about. And the perception is that men are becoming more feminized because they are shaving their chests.
And their testicles, yes.
And waxing and waxing and all that.
Oh, then we're arguing the same topic because I'm saying this is the perception. I'm not saying that's the reality.
I think the perception is rooted in the reality.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I think it's perceived. Like, I'm not denying all these acts of the metrosexual, which that seems to have died out, but I don't know, maybe no one talks about it anymore. A lot of these things are just buzzwords that become hip for a while. Like even you mentioned cougars, and you say that's always been around, but it has. I mean, older women looking for younger men has been around ever since older men have been looking for younger women.
What I'm saying is maybe what is perceived as feminine isn't really feminine, but that's how it's perceived, and and it's being rebelled against, and I think that's what Fight Club's about, the whole feminization of men.
But does it need to be rebelled against? I think the guys, no guy has been spending. Maybe I'm wrong here. A guy who became what we would call in the late 90s a metrosexual, who he would go to the spa and soak his nails and whatever, have exfoliate his skin. These aren't the guys that are suddenly changing around saying, I want my masculinity back, I'm going to go start a fight club, or I'm going to go and the people that were macho were already macho, and the people that were slightly, I'll use the term effeminate, are still going to stay effeminate. So the Fight Club seems to be an example of men that felt like they were forced into a certain lifestyle and they wanted to go against it.
That is the and the sexual aspect is only one small aspect I shouldn't say small partial aspect of it. Well, okay. So, but the guys in Fight Club, they didn't know what they were missing. Mm-hmm. Had they not heard of Fight Club and decided to check it out, they would never have known. They knew they were missing something. At least we have to assume through the main character that he gained like-minded people. But also, Fight Club has a strong anti-corporate message. In fact, one could even that prefigured the Occupy Wall Street movement with the whole. We were told by TV and commercials that we'd all be movie stars and rock stars and drive $1 million cars, but we won't.
Really? Fight Club, the one that was put out by a major publisher and then made into a movie by a major movie corporation?
Yeah, the very same.
The one that I can buy a T-shirt at any Target if I want?
The one I bought a T-shirt of? Well, you bought it from me, but...
Well, it's funny. I think I had mentioned very early on when I was talking about the 3 topics how I disagree with 2 of them. One was the
feminization.
Was going all the way back. It was the idea of lost masculinity, and the other one was whatever the third topic that I keep forgetting is. But the one with corporations, I do agree. I think the generation of the characters in Fight Club. I can't think of the name that Edward Norton's character plays.
He doesn't have a name in it. Sometimes they call him Cornelius, but he's never named.
Don't spoil the ending. The corporate aspect is another interesting thing, but because we are one of the first generations that grew up reaping the benefits of all the corporate goodies, with the low price.
And we're also
everything.
We're also probably one of the first generations to reap the foul harvest of that too, with collapsing home market and higher taxes.
But this is another example, and you may disagree or agree with this, but is that much like with the perception of lost masculinity, where I think the movie's assuming that all men feel this, is the whole corporation. To say that we were manipulated by corporations and that they took over our lives is kind of implying that we didn't go willingly. But I feel like we as a society and we as individuals have gone willingly. You've chosen to reap the benefits of these corporations, so now you can say that we're paying the price with everything you just mentioned.
Not true.
But we have no one to blame but ourselves, and I feel like Fight Club, which obviously you can't tell it now, I'm a detractor of the movie and you're a protractor. That
isn't the right word. 45-degree angle, Tim.
Well, no, you're not straight. Is that...
You're the one arguing pedicures are straight.
Is that... What was my point now?
Maybe I'm a rhombus now?
Oh, the movie portrays it, if I remember correctly, and I haven't seen the movie in a while, is him as this sort of zombie, going through. They show there's a very over-the-top scene where he's walking to his apartment and you see it's like an IKEA catalog, and it kind of makes it seem like he's a zombie kind of getting dragged.
And he's an immoral zombie at that, because he's a recall coordinator, that's what the term was. And they multiply for a major corporation, and he says which car company do you work for? A major one, but he multiplies the amount of projected fatalities by the average out of court settlement, and then subtracts from the cost of a recall. And if the price of the recall is more, they do not do the recall and let the people die. Mm-hmm. So that's another aspect where they attack corporatism.
I guess the point I was trying to make was that the movie portrays him as like a zombie who's being dragged along by this life, but the reality is not that same. Is that no one is forcing you at gunpoint to go to IKEA. No one is forcing you to become this sort of a corporate slave.
Well, what else are you going to do? I mean, I'm not defending the viewpoint at all, but what else are you going to do? You're going to start a fight club, but you're not going to do that till after. When you're desperate, when you're trying not to drown, you'll grab for anything, and a lot of stuff you grab for won't help you. But you'll still say, "Oh, well, what if the other thing's worse?"
Once again, you can say this is all out of our fault, and this actually ties. This whole corporate dependency ties into what I was talking about earlier, and we were both talking about earlier. It's with the change in the social structure of the family unit, with women being in the workplace. Because now that women are working, you have double incomes. Everyone's making twice as much money as they used to. Of course, with the whole supply and demand of our society, is prices are going to raise, because if everyone can afford 2 TVs and 2 cars and 2 houses, obviously the prices are going to go up, where that is no longer the case. So you can even blame the women entering the workforce for our current corporate troubles.
Well, I'm not sure that we I think corporate troubles. I think we have them, of course, but I don't think they're definitely not as extreme as in Fight Club. I don't think. Mm. But it's fun, like houses. It's funny you should mention houses and TVs, because TVs have steadily gone down in price, while houses have steadily gone up. There's a little aside.
Definitely worth mentioning. But I don't know, this whole... I'm not anti-corporation, obviously, but I'm not totally pro-corporation either. I'm like in the middle, but people tend to forget, it's so easy to go out on, let me occupy Wall Street and not shave my legs. Sorry, I might show my bias towards dirty hippies. To occupy Wall Street...
Actually, compared to this conversation, that might not necessarily be the women.
True that. It all ties in. I hate corporations. Corporations are whores. They're ruining my life, and I'm going to tweet it on my iPhone and my iPad.
I see what you're saying.
And we benefit. Look at prices have gone up for other, for stuff like milk and eggs and blah blah blah. Okay. But the prices on things like you said, even TV stuff that we were considered unaffordable are now affordable because of this. So our lives have also improved a lot because of these big companies. A TV, I think, used to cost what would be in today's dollars like $10,000
Yeah.
back in 1950 or 1940. You were around, I wasn't. But
oh, you were on vacation that year?
these are the people that say they've ruined our lives, but you've benefited so much from it, even from the mass production of the foods. Listen, I could be wrong here. I don't know what a gallon of milk cost, back in 1945 compared to today in relation to what your salary was, but I feel like you've got to be better off today.
You are, but a lot of that has to do with, I should probably the wrong term, but it's the term inorganic foods, foods that were, normal foods. The yield of cows and the yield of everything has gotten very, due to artificial modifications, has become very, very large. Unfortunately, now we're losing all that sales because gas has become very expensive.
There's 1,000 topics here, so you can talk about the whole organic movement now, and they can say all these chemicals have ruined our lives and our bodies. But on the same end, a lot of these chemicals have saved us. And I'm not like some totally pro. Listen, I'm in the middle of everything. I don't want to sound like some ranting conservative here, but a lot of these pesticides that we're against, some of them have caused harm, but a lot of them have saved lives.
Most of them haven't.
Have not caused harm.
Yeah, LRB. Actually, LRB is something that goes on Apple, and it's only... It is carcinogenic. It's a little less carcinogenic than the actual apple, and it's completely safe for human consumption. But due to the precautionary principle, meaning never mind the science, just pass the law, it's in danger of being bills being banned.
Yeah, same. But DDT is something that's been proven to have saved more lives than caused harm. Yet because it did cause harm, people you get up in arms about it.
Which isn't even proven the harm that it caused.
The point is that we certain things exist for a reason, and pesticides have I don't know how we got on this topic, but pesticides aren't evil. Non-organic isn't necessarily evil, but in some cases it is unnecessary. But it has a lot to do with the prices as well. If you want to buy large quantities of fruit and vegetables, you have to expect that there's going to be some sort of corporate hand in that whole thing. Okay, well, I guess enough about pesticides. I'm not sure how we got on that topic, but let's kind of turn back to Fight Club, which was our original topic. And I guess the third point we had made, or you had made in the beginning, was aside from the emasculation of men,
yes,
the corporate takeover of our society, was the lack of, or not the lack of, but the inability of the current generation, and this being 1996, to really grow up and just dive headfirst into adulthood. What do you want to say about that?
Well, I think that kind of ties into the feminization or demasculinization of men, because they don't need to grow up. Women will take care of them. I'm overstating a little bit, but only a little bit. Women will, support them. They don't need to. They can. And what's one of the things that really makes a boy become a man? Fatherhood, impending fatherhood. That's really I would say, one of the tests of it. But now that women are marrying later, having children later, there's a gap in between men and women, because men are professional, blah 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 blah, and even if they get married, which most people do much later now, it's still like a 10-year gap from 20 to when you're 30, when women start oh crap, I'm running out of time, I should start having children. Not for all women, but for a lot, and I think that ties into the movie too. I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I'm thinking this is a very misogynistic movie. But yet, they kind of, since women are changing the roles, and the male role has to change, and that's one of the ways it does.
No, you made a very interesting point there, and it's funny because I never really thought about it in depthly, is how women sort of have that biological clock that really is a major factor on their lives, whereas for men that isn't quite the same. No. So whereas we can climb the corporate ladder all we want and then decide to have children when we're 55, really.
60, 70.
Yeah, look at Anthony Quinn or Tony Randall. Those are just two old men that I can think of that have kids in their 70s. But what were you saying? How do you feel that this movie is misogynistic? I mean, first of all, we haven't really talked about the female character, and I need to cut you off before you answer, but I forgot her name already.
Marla Singer.
Marla. Is she really a sympathetic character, do you think? Does the audience sympathize with her?
She is... she's a multifaceted character because she's the same thing as Edward Norton, Cornelius or whatever. Like I said, he never gets a name. But she has more humanity, and she actually has feelings for him that she can actually express and vocalize, whereas he can't, for reasons that I can't tell you because I don't want to spoil the movie.
For the one person who hasn't seen it.
They never know.
But you're going back into what you were saying before about the movie being misogynistic. What did you mean by that?
Well, I sense a lot of women being blamed. Or maybe, one could say cultural roles of women being blamed. But either way, that's, we're a generation raised by women. I don't think another woman is the answer for us. The whole subtext of the feminization, or demasculinization of men, I think that's pretty misogynistic. Which also because it's the men didn't take charge and change the role of women. Society did. The women really took charge and they changed the role of women. So basically, every bad thing that happens in the movie can be blamed on women.
For some reason, I feel like whenever the topic of lost masculinity comes up, of course, there's really no other debate except for to say that it's because of men being repressed by women. The assumption being that if we were a society of all men, none of these current behaviors, like getting your nails manicured and stuff, would even have a reason to exist.
Mani-pedi.
Let's go after the podcast. We'll edit that out, maybe. I guess there's no way to. I mean, the whole concept, the whole theory of lost masculinity is what I was saying. Is only balanced by women coming into power and women repressing men. There's no other debate. There seems to be. That was my point. Is if there was nothing but men and no women, this wouldn't even be an argument. Obviously, I mean, there wouldn't be any issues of lost masculinity. So. Because the opposite of masculinity is femininity, correct?
Yeah. So, but what this movie completely fails to discuss or even touch upon or anything, not that it should,
is the space race.
No, actually, they said when space exploration amps up, only corporations will be able to buy stuff out there. It'll be the Microsoft Galaxy. So no, they do touch on that.
Certainly a random topic that wasn't. Never mind then.
But if males are getting masculinized, are women getting defeminized?
Absolutely, I think that
I don't think so. I don't think to the extent that men are getting demasculinized.
Well, there's many different facets to that because you got to look at what is acceptable masculinity and acceptable femininity, and it seems to be from our culture when discussing men. I think you have more expectations. I think. And people will definitely disagree with this, as far as being a man and what your acceptable behaviors are that don't necessarily translate to women. Like, truthfully, I think it's okay. It's not okay in any sense of the public's perception at large to be a feminine man or to be a homosexual, whereas with females, no one seems to really care if a woman is a little bit butch or even if a woman is a lesbian. No one seems to judge her as harshly. They
don't judge her if she's a lesbian that looks good. If she's a butch, they judge her just as intensely as they judge gay men. Homosexuals that are like flaming and flamboyant and they're judged much more harshly than I like men. And the men, the just matter of fact people. In fact, a lot of the gay activists try to keep the exceedingly butch and exceedingly flamboyant gays out of the gay activism arena, just because. They want normal society, quote unquote, to accept them. They want to keep those fringes out. They want
sort of a mainstream idea of a person.
Yeah, the gay next door.
Gotcha. But going back to your original statement about the defeminizing of women, there's a certain perception of women, in the corporate world that to get to a certain level, you have to be either A, a bitch, or B, take on masculine tendencies in order to climb.
There's another one that you're not saying, and it's probably more prevalent than either of those, and is very reliant on femininity.
What?
Fuck your way to the top.
Yeah.
That's how people generally assume that women get to the top. Well, but not even in our.
That's how I got to be the head fry person at McDonald's. Sorry.
But I mean, even now, like men, women in power aren't as like we at our job we have a couple of women in power, not this podcast thing, but it's not you don't necessarily assume that their way to the top.
True. The ball slapping, what is that noise actually supposed to represent?
Sex, some aspect of sex. This is going to be good. Man, I hope you get the editing machine out.
But we've also went off topic a little bit. What we're saying about maybe we won't be tackled it, but men not growing up. And first of all, I never understood the comment about were men raised by women, because that's pretty much always the way it has been from society.
No, it's different. Men raised by women and men raised by women and men is a different thing. You had some sort of father figure there, even if he wasn't really involved in the life. He was there. He was a leavening influence on the mother, or the mother was a leavening influence on the father. Either way, there was more of a.
But what is the point that he's making? So I don't think much has changed in that. Personally, I think that let's talk about more single-family homes. I mean,
yes, that's what he's talking about, or fathers that abandon their children and stuff like that. That's what he's talking about. The single-family thing exploded in the 1970s, which would have been when he was coming of age.
Yeah.
Although it's ironic in the book, the guy talks about conversations he has with his dad, but in the movie he says he doesn't even know his father. He left when he was like 7. The whole generation of men raised by women, basically it says we've the whole what we would call at a later time metrosexuality thing came from that. That's where it came from. That's where we started losing what makes us men. Which
makes I can half agree with that comment and half not, because it's just interesting, because certainly women aren't sitting with their sons and teaching them how to apply makeup and do this and that.
No.
So the absence of a father, to me, on the surface seems to be there's no guy out on the front lawn playing catch with you, or I guess disciplining is obviously the main thing they're talking about.
No, I don't think it's even disciplining the main thing they're talking about. I think it's more like hey son, let's go get an ice cream. Hey, let's go play baseball. Hey, let's go play soccer. I'm going to take you to Little League. That sort of thing. Especially at that point, when the narrator was growing up, he would have been, hey, it's a Father's Sunday picnic. Fuck, I can't go. I don't have a dad because I'm not. But a lot of other people would at that point. Even this is the beginnings of when single parenthood became. Actually, it wasn't even acceptable so much as it happened. So, and he probably would have felt that pain very strongly.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right, well, we're kind of closing in on an hour almost. I think we should wrap it up a little bit. I'll give you my final thoughts, really, in regards to the whole masculinity thing. I think that the movie makes very interesting points and a lot of valid points. I think the one thing it negates to mention is that that sort of macho behavior that the movie sort of says is missing from a lot of guys' lives, I don't think really is missing, which I might have said that earlier on. Like, there's a certain, image of the cliched...
The Marlboro Man.
Yeah, well, that's a good example, actually, the Marlboro Man. But there's the cliched, there's the guy who, sits at home watching football while his wife goes shopping and says, I'm not going. And the new perception seems to be portrayed of, the whipped husband standing in the store holding all the bags with all the other whipped husbands while the woman shops. That seems to, I don't think either one of those cliches has really ever existed. I think we've always been a nice balance in the middle. I don't think that shift has been as large as they seem to be claiming. I think it's just a whole movement in the media. I wanted to mention something else that I had forgotten, but there was this movement a couple years ago, I guess, with it wasn't this past Super Bowl, but it was the previous Super Bowl, and I remember they had a lot of different commercials, and I remember watching them about getting back masculinity. It was almost like Fight Club, but 10 years later. And one was a Burger King commercial, which you might remember, of all these guys, they're... one guy's sitting in a restaurant with his girlfriend eating lettuce, and another guy's, opening up his lunchbox, and there's like a yogurt or something. And then they all start marching down the street, stopping what they're doing. They all go to Burger King and they grab hamburgers, and they're singing down the streets about how, being a man is having a hamburger. Do you remember that commercial at all?
No.
It was on a lot. And there's another commercial about, there's a couple car commercials about, women have held us back. We're doing this and this and this. And, the one thing I'm going to do for myself is I'm going to get this nice sports car. So there seems to be, it's like all these supposed things that are going on in our society about masculinity being lost and being refound are all figments, thank you, of the media and what they want to sell that month.
I think to an extent it is. But I think there are certain masculine behaviors that aren't done anymore. And I'm not saying that everybody should go out and start a fight club. Although when Fight Club really started getting amped up, one of the first homework assignments that Tyler Durden gives is to start a fight and lose. Meaning the whole point of the fighting wasn't so much even to win. We won. Yeah, I won. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It was to feel something. The narrator explicitly compares it to a religious experience. The screams were in tongues, evoking the Holy Spirit and all that. So, I don't think that the whole hamburger songs breaking out was really real, but I think there has definitely been a shift, and it's a very perceptible shift.
Yeah.
And it's perceptible for us. We're like a generation or two removed from it.
Yeah.
So, to the people going through it, it must have been confusing as hell. And this is probably, an example of cultural metabolism. They're trying to metabolize all this information. And, in some cases we get How to Make an American Quilt and that one ironically with Brad Pitt in it where...
Thelma and Louise?
Yes. We get that, which is, a celebration of female empowerment and blah, 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 blah.
Which is funny, that movie is a celebration of female empowerment, but it seems to me that movie does that by showing females acting like men, which is probably another podcast topic.
Like The Birdcage, except for men acting like females.
True. And then my closing thought on the whole corporate...
Actually, it shows females acting like men.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the defeminization is happening.
It's possible. And the whole corporate thing is that the points the movie makes about corporate, us becoming these corporate slaves is... yes, we have become corporate slaves, but you can't blame the corporations. You got to blame yourself. That's my final thought on that.
I don't know. I don't think the corporations, started out trying to do this, but I think we've been warned about corporations since at least Eisenhower. He was the one who warned about the since Lincoln. Lincoln said he grieves for my country when he sees how much money the Civil War has made these people and what an impact it will have on freedom. And Eisenhower was the first person to talk about the military-industrial complex. So I do think corporations are dangerous, but unfortunately they're also necessary. But the whole thing with, we want to take it back to zero. Everybody, his vision was people pounding out tiger skins on the what used to be the freeway. Mm-hmm. So he wants a really a Luddite society, a very anti-technology society. But his big problem with that isn't so much. I don't think he's got a problem with corporations. He wants to destroy them, but he doesn't want to destroy them because they're bad. He wants to destroy them because of the effect they have on people.
Yeah, turning us into sheep.
Yes.
Sheeple, current buzzword that I hate. Do you have anything else you want to add to this topic?
Probably, but we'll revisit it later.
All right, well, that's our Fight Club, and I guess Fight Club's influence on, sociology, right? We talked about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And we're touching upon an hour here, our longest podcast yet. Hopefully you stuck with us this long. If you have any questions or comments, email us at popdiner@yahoo.com. See you next time.